5 centuries before the sails of the Santa Maria first caught the Atlantic winds, a European foot had already stepped onto the shores of the New World. History remembers Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, yet hidden behind this assertion lies a profound injustice. The Genoese captain died in the conviction that he had paved a route to the Indies. He was driven by gold, spices, and a thirst for glory. The navigator we are about to discuss pursued entirely different goals. He did not wander through a fog of guesswork. He realized with absolute clarity that what lay before him was certainly not Asia. Leif Erikson has entered the textbooks as a brave Viking discoverer. However, behind this image hides the figure of a calculating political player. In reality, he acted not as a barbarian conqueror, but as a subtle diplomat and missionary. His path to greatness began not with a lust for plunder, but with the purchase of a dilapidated longship from a man whose courage had given way to fear. In the previous episode, we saw how Erik the Red built an empire on a foundation of lies, christening an icy wasteland, Greenland. Now you will see how the son shatters the old world of his father to create his own. You will discover the true history hidden behind the sparse lines of ancient sagas. Why did the great Erik the Red, conqueror of Greenland, remain on shore because of a stumbling horse? And how did this seemingly accidental episode rewrite the history of a continent? How did an intimate war in the chieftain's bedchamber and the construction of a tiny church split the most powerful family of the North? And what did the Vikings actually discover in Vinland, a find that for the inhabitants of treeless Greenland was valued higher than chests of gold? This is a saga of transformation. It is the story of how the son of an exile and a murderer rejects the path of blood to become Lucky. Leif Erikson achieved the impossible. He linked Europe and America a full millennium before the emergence of global networks. However, triumph turned into a trap. The perfect bloodless voyage birthed a fatal illusion. The Norsemen assumed the new land was empty and defenseless. This mistake would cost his brother his life and doom all subsequent attempts at colonization to failure. Leif's history proves success is never accidental. It is the result of meticulous preparation, multiplied by the audacity to peer beyond the horizon. We are accustomed to perceiving the Viking Age as a time of axes and shields, but now a different facet of the North stands revealed before us. An era of diplomacy, religious schisms, and cold commercial calculation. From the old gods to the white Christ, from Greenland to the grapevines of America, we are setting off for Vinland. 999 AD. The world has frozen on the threshold of a new millennium. In Europe, they await the apocalypse, while in Scandinavia, the final bonfires of the old era are burning out. The times when any lucky cutthroat could declare himself a cunning have vanished into oblivion. Chaos is being replaced by order. The hammer of Thor is being replaced by the cross. At this turning point, young Leif Erikson leaves Greenland. Instead of the usual hunt for goods, he steers his ship east to Norway in search of not just resources, but legitimacy. Officially, this is a trade mission. Greenland needs timber, iron, and grain. But Leif's true goal is far more ambitious. The son of Erik the Red understands. His father's power rests only on the authority of the first settler and fear. But Erik is an aging exile, a murderer who was thrown out of the civilized world. Leif has no desire to remain in the shadow of an outcast. He strives to become part of the new elite. The ship enters the port of Nidaros. Here awaits an audience capable of changing the destiny of 2 continents. On the throne of Norway sits Olaf Tryggvason. Before Leif stands not just a king, but a fanatical crusader of the north. A man who baptizes with fire and sword, tolerating no objections. The sagas paint him as a magnificent athlete and a ruthless ruler, torturing pagans with red-hot coals. Leif stands before him. The meeting of these men turns into a collision of ambitions. Olaf sees in his guest not a barbarian from the fringes, but a valuable key. Greenland remains the last stronghold of the old gods, a territory uncontrolled by his crown and his god. The king makes Leif an offer that is impossible to refuse. He showers the Greenlander with honors, gifts him a cloak and a ring, accepting him into his personal retinue. But the price of this mercy is high. Leif must renounce the faith of his ancestors and bow his head before the White Christ. For his father, Erik the Red, such an act is tantamount to treason. Erik despised kings. He fled to the edge of the world for the sake of freedom. Leif, however, voluntarily accepts the status of a vassal. He undergoes the rite of baptism. Along with him, his entire crew changes their faith. Thus is born Leif the diplomat, the complete opposite of his father. If Erik embodied pagan fury and independence, the son becomes a politician and an agent of foreign influence. King Olaf entrusts the new convert with a special mission. Leif will return home not only with a cargo of timber. A priest boards his ship. Leif's task is to baptize Greenland. Appreciate the irony of the moment. The son brings the father not aid, but an ideological weapon capable of destroying the entire way of life in Brattahlid. He returns to annihilate the world that Erik created. Leif raises the sails. Buoyed by the support of a powerful monarch, he does not yet suspect that the most difficult trial awaits him not at sea, but at the threshold of his own home. It is there, in Greenland, that a quiet but brutal war for human souls will erupt, and the first battlefield will be the marital bedroom of his parents. We return to Brattahlid. 1000 A.D. Leif's ship cuts through the waves of Erik's fjord. On the shore, Erik the Red stands frozen, leaning on his trusty staff. The old man awaits the heir who will deliver goods, news, and strengthen the clan's authority. However, the son does not return alone. Following him onto the rocky soil of Greenland steps a man in a black cassock, a priest. For Erik, this moment turns into a stab in the back. Once he left Norway to escape royal despotism. The outcast built his own world at the edge of the earth to rule by ancient laws. And now his own blood brings into his house an agent of the very power the Red refused to bow to for decades. The saga dryly records, Erik was slow to accept the faith. Behind this laconic phrase pulses a blinding rage. The head of the colony realizes Leif has arrived not as an obedient son, but as a dangerous competitor, armed with an idea against which steel is powerless. The conflict of generations instantly escalates into a political crisis. The heir proclaims the arrival of Christianity. He preaches the salvation of the soul, but the political subtext is obvious: integration. Greenland cannot survive in isolation. Trade with Europe requires entry into the Christian circle. Erik sees only weakness in these changes. He remains loyal to luck and Thor to the very end. But Leif strikes from the rear, recruiting an ally in the very heart of his father's citadel. Thjodhild, Leif's mother, accepts baptism. The baptism of the mistress shifts the balance of power in the Brattahlid estate. Thjodhild transforms into a fierce champion of the new faith. She declares war on her husband, deploying the only weapon available to a woman in a harsh male society. The saga of Erik the Red preserved a telling detail. Thjodhild refused to share her bed with Erik after she took the faith, and this annoyed him greatly. To put it in modern terms, she kicked the chieftain out of the bedroom. Feel the depth of this humiliation. A man who inspired fear across all of Scandinavia, a discoverer and absolute ruler of Greenland, loses power over his own home. His wife issues a harsh ultimatum, either the cross or eternal loneliness. This bedroom revolt turned into a crushing political instrument. Erik, accustomed to suppressing resistance with force, found himself completely disarmed. He could not raise a hand against the mother of his children or force her into submission. Thjodhild demands the construction of a church. Broken by the domestic blockade, the chieftain yields, setting a single condition. The building must not be visible to him. Thus arises Thjodhild Darkkirke, a tiny temple made of turf and wood. Archaeologists who excavated the foundation of the structure confirmed this was not an architectural error, but a result of a difficult compromise. The church is positioned so that it is physically impossible to see from the threshold of Erik's longhouse. This hill became the line that divided the family. In the pagan hall of the chieftain, old comrades still feast, but over the slope, in the Christian temple, women and youth gather under Leif's leadership. The heir has won. Without unsheathing a sword, he split his old world in two and proved he is capable of leading people, offering something more than just a struggle for survival. But for true greatness, a new ideology is not enough. Greenland is suffocating from a deficit of resources. The island lacks timber for construction, houses are patched with driftwood, and ships are rotting. Leif needs a feat capable of eclipsing his father's glory, and fate hands him a chance embodied in the tale of one accidental merchant.
The history of great discoveries is often written not by heroes, but by pragmatists who walked past greatness without even turning their heads. In Greenland lived a man named Bjarni Herjolfsson, a merchant, a captain, a realist to the bone. 15 years before the events described, while trying to reach these harsh shores from Iceland, he was caught in a storm. The wind knocked him off course, and fog hid the horizon. When the haze lifted, Bjarni saw land, but this was not Greenland. Instead of the familiar glaciers and bare rocks, rolling hills covered in dense forest stretched out before him. The crew begged the captain to go ashore, to replenish water supplies, to simply touch this new landmass. Bjarni refused. His answer entered history as a model of fatal frugality. "This is not the land we are looking for. We need to deliver the cargo to my father before winter." The navigator turned the ship around and went east, never becoming the first European in America. His delivery schedule proved more important to him than immortality. Leif Erikson listens to this story intently, and he catches in it not just a sea yarn, but a real opportunity. Greenland seems like a rich country only if you are a walrus or a seal. For a human, it is a cage. You cannot find timber here. Every ship, every beam in the roof of a longhouse is either driftwood thrown up by the surf or an expensive import from Norway. Bjarni mentioned a forest. endless ship pines standing right by the water. Leif approaches the merchant not for idle curiosity. He brings a bag of silver and purchases the gnar of that very unlucky navigator. This action is filled with deep Scandinavian mysticism. Vikings believed that the luck of a vessel is transferred to the new owner. Leif hopes that the ship, having once found the path to the new world, will remember the way back. Leif now has a ship, a crew of 35 men, and a clear goal. Only one thing is missing: luck. The Vikings understood luck, or haminga, not as chance. For them, it was a quality of a chieftain, almost a magical substance. Leif is young, his personal power is yet untested, but his father, Erik the Red, despite his nasty temper, possesses colossal discoverer's luck. He found Greenland and survived where others perished. Leif performs a subtle political maneuver. He asks his father to lead the expedition. Think about the psychology of the moment. The son, who just humiliated his father by bringing a Christian priest, now publicly acknowledges his authority. "Father, without your luck, we will not make it." Old Erik resists, citing age and aching joints, but deep down, the flattered chieftain yields. The adventurer inside him defeats the aggrieved old man. The day of departure. Erik the Red, dressed in his finest clothes, hides a small chest of gold and silver, an offering to the spirits, or a secret stash. He mounts a horse to ride the final few hundred meters to the shore. This was supposed to be the patriarch's triumphal exit, but the irreparable happens. The horse stumbles on level ground. The great navigator, conqueror of the ocean, is thrown from the saddle and falls with a heavy crunch onto the stony ground of Thjodhild. The sagas dryly record he injured his leg and broke several ribs, but the physical pain is nothing compared to the mystical horror. For a man of that era, this is not an accident, but a verdict. The spirits of the land have rejected him. The luck that kept Erik safe his whole life abandoned him at the decisive moment. Erik lies in the mud, staring at the gray sky, and utters words that became the epitaph of his era. "It is not ordained that I should discover more lands than the one we now live in. Here our ways part." He returns to the house, to the wife praying to a foreign god. He remains in the past. Leif boards the ship alone. Now he is the sole captain. The shadow of his father looming over him has finally dissipated, but along with it, the safety net has vanished. Ahead lies an ocean that exists on no map, and a land seen only once, fleetingly, 15 years ago. Leif commands to raise the sail. Bjarni's vessel heads out to sea, but the new captain makes an unexpected navigational choice. Instead of searching for a new path, Leif decides to reverse Bjarni's route. Leif will sail to where the merchant came from, retracing his trail step by step in reverse order. This decision seems logical, but it will lead them, initially, not to grapevines, but to a place resembling the vestibule of hell. They will see land, but will they want to step onto it?
Leif Erikson guides the ship into the open sea. His hands do not clutch a map. The course is directed only by Bjarni's oral instructions. "Sail to where I came from." Before us is a navigational reverse. Leif must reconstruct the route of the unlucky merchant, but in reverse order. The first days of the voyage pass in tense silence. The crew peers into the gray gloom of the Davis Strait, and then a dark line breaks the horizon. The team rushes to the gunwales. They hope to see those very green hills whispered about in Greenland, but instead an icy nightmare rises from the fog. Thus opens Helluland. On modern maps, this point is marked as Baffin Island. The Vikings, however, saw here only the vestibule of hell. The saga describes the shore with frightening precision. No grass grew there. Great glaciers loomed in the distance, and the entire space to the sea was covered by a single slab of rock. Leif steps onto the shore. The soles of his boots feel not sand, but dead slate slabs. Around him, no trees, no pastures, no signs of life. Only Arctic foxes and a wind that strips the skin. Many in his place would have turned back, deciding that Bjarni had lied, but Leif maintains cold composure. Naming the new land Helluland, land of flat stones, he orders the sail raised. The navigator realizes this is not the finale. This is only the beginning. The ship holds a course south. The landscape gradually changes. Icy cliffs retreat, revealing endless white beaches to their gaze. And then, something happens that makes the Greenlanders freeze in reverence. From behind the dunes rises a wall, not of stone, of green, a forest. Where we see a common forest, a Greenlander saw a treasure surpassing gold. For a resident of Greenland, whose highest vegetation is dwarf birch reaching the knee, what they saw seems like a mirage. Before them stretches Markland, forest land, present-day Labrador. Imagine a Viking's palm touching the trunk of an ancient spruce. In Greenland, one could lose their life over a piece of timber like this. A dense thicket is not just firewood, it is the foundation for a keel, supports for a roof capable of withstanding the weight of snow, and a reliable axe handle that won't fail in battle. The crew sees not just a landscape, before them is a priceless resource. They are eager to stay. They want to chop, load, build. This is the white gold of the north, for the sake of which it was worth challenging the ocean. But Leif does not give the command to set up camp. Herein lies his genius, or his obsession. Bjarni spoke of a third land, of a place where the climate is even milder. Leif, son of Erik, does not wish to be known as a simple lumberjack. He feels the main prize awaits ahead. By his order, the men return to the ship, leaving the riches of Markland in their wake. Wind fills the sail. The ship's prow cuts the water, rushing south, to where the nights become shorter and the air sweeter, to where Viking history will take its most incredible turn. The ship continues its journey south. The air grows warmer, the daylight hours longer. And finally, they find what they were looking for. The navigators enter a shallow bay. The water here teems with salmon, fish of a size the Greenlanders had never seen. On the banks, grass grows thickly, which, as the sagas note with surprise, hardly withers in winter. For cattle breeders accustomed to harvesting hay under snow, this looks like paradise on earth. Leif orders the anchor dropped. The Vikings bring their leather sleeping bags ashore and build temporary shelters. Later, when the decision to winter becomes final, sturdy houses of turf and wood rise here. The sagas call this place Leif's Budir, Leif's Booths, or Leif's Camp. Modern archaeology has given this settlement another name, Los Meadows. In 1960, on the northern tip of Newfoundland, Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and his wife, archaeologist Anne Steen Ingstad, discovered the outlines of those very structures. Excavations revealed a truth that had been considered a myth for centuries. The finds were not limited to walls. Researchers discovered a smithy, slag from smelting bog iron, and hundreds of nails. The Scandinavians didn't just live here, they repaired their ships. But one find is truly astounding: a tiny stone spindle whorl, a part of a spinning wheel. This small object rewrote history. It proved that women participated in the expeditions. The Vikings did not arrive for simple curiosity. They sailed to inhabit the land, weave wool, and manage households. However, Leif's Budir serves only as a base. Leif sends reconnaissance parties deep into the territory. His order is strict: split up. Some guard the camp, others explore the land, but every evening everyone must return. This caution saves their lives, but one day, the established system fails. In the evening, one man does not return to camp. Leif loses not just a warrior. Tyrkir has vanished, a German whom the chieftain called his foster father, the man who nursed him in childhood while Erik the Red was busy with wars and courts. For Leif, this is a personal tragedy. Furious, he assembles a search party. They find the old man not far from the camp. Tyrkir behaves strangely. He rolls his eyes excitedly, makes faces, and babbles incoherently in his native German tongue. It seems to Leif that his foster father has gone mad or fallen under a spell. But Tyrkir is not insane. He's simply drunk with happiness. When the German switches to Norse, he utters words that will forever change the map of the world. "I found vines and grapes." For people raised on bare rocks, grapes are a symbol of incomprehensible luxury, an attribute of southern kings and Christian communion. Leif initially does not believe it, but Tyrkir, hailing from the winemaking regions of the Rhine, knows exactly what he's talking about. Leif gives this land a name: Vinland, Wineland, or Vineland. Many historians have debated, could Vikings have found grapes on Newfoundland? The climate was warmer then. Perhaps they discovered wild currants or gooseberries, from which wine was also made. But for Leif, botanical precision is not important. The symbol is what matters. Just as his father named a glacier Greenland, the son names the new shore Vinland. It's a promise of wealth and prosperity. All winter, Leif's people are occupied with hard labor. The romance of discovery gives way to cold calculation. The Vikings fell trees, harvest vines, dry berries. The hold of Bjarni's ship fills with resources that in Greenland are valued more dearly than gold. Leif realizes he has attained great wealth. He is bringing home not just stories of new lands, he is bringing proof capable of turning him into the wealthiest man of the North. Spring arrives. The ship, sitting deep in the water under the weight of the cargo, pushes off from the shores of Vinland. Leif leaves the houses empty. He never knows he will himself never return here. Ahead is the ocean, and a meeting that will gift him a new name. Spring fills the sails. Leif's Snar, settled heavily in the water, sets a course for Greenland. Hidden in the holds is a cargo more valuable to the inhabitants of the icy island than a royal treasury: timber, grapevines, and dried berries. Leif arrives not merely as a wanderer. Now, he is the most successful merchant in the history of the colony. But the North Atlantic prepares a final exam for him. Approaching Greenland, amidst the ice fields, Leif's sharp eye notices something strange on a lonely reef. The crew insists it is merely seagulls, but Leif, possessing the phenomenal instinct of a navigator, orders a change of course. He draws closer and sees people. Before him are 15 people who have suffered a shipwreck. The poor soul's ship was smashed, and they were slowly fading from cold and thirst in the middle of the ocean. Among the saved is Thorir, a noble Norwegian, and his wife. Leif performs an act that will define his reputation for decades to come. Instead of passing by, he hoists both the people and all the surviving cargo of their vessel on board. In this moment, his legendary nickname is born: Leif the Lucky, Leifir hin Hepni. For a Viking, luck is not blind chance, but a
intangible quality of a chieftain. Leif proved his exceptionalism 3 times. He discovered a new land, returned with rich booty, and saved people, gaining the right to their property and eternal gratitude. He returns to Thjodhild a victor. The meeting of father and son strikes the final chord in their complex relationship. Leif stands before Erik the Red. He is no longer the youth who brought a foreign god. Now he is the provider, delivering timber for building homes and ships. He has proven his righteousness not with words, but with deeds. The saga of the Greenlanders records a dry but important fact. Soon after his son's return, Erik the Red departs, leaving the heir with power and the burden of responsibility. The old world is leaving. The great exile who discovered Greenland vacates the throne. The death of the father places the heavy mantle of the paramount chieftain on Leif's shoulders, and this becomes his golden cage. Here lies the main tragedy of Leif Erikson, the man who discovered America, who knows the way to Vinland, will never see the shores of the New World again. The status of chieftain requires his presence in Greenland. He is obliged to judge disputes, distribute lands, and govern the colony. Leif the traveler dies. Leif the administrator is born. But Vinland does not let go of the Vikings' minds. Leif's stories inflame the imagination of others. His brother Thjodhild believed the land was not explored enough. Leif performs a gesture of unprecedented generosity, or perhaps fatalism. He tells his brother, "You may take my ship to sail to Vinland." He hands over the instrument of his glory, understanding that he himself is now chained to the cliffs of Thjodhild. The history of discovery is only beginning, but for Leif, it is finished. He took the first step, but the bloody price for colonization will have to be paid by others. Ahead lie expeditions that will encounter what Leif happily avoided: the true masters of this land.
Leif Erikson achieved the impossible. He closed the circle of North Atlantic expansion, uniting the old world with the new. The Greenlanders received from him not just a faith, but real hope. The forests of Markland and the riches of the new lands promised the colony prosperity, free from the dictates of Norwegian kings. However, behind the nickname the Lucky lurked a dark shadow. Leif's flawless voyage birthed a dangerous illusion among the Scandinavians. Having met no resistance in Vinland, the Northerners deemed the rich land uninhabited and submissive. In their eyes, it turned into an ownerless pantry waiting for a new master. Such blindness would turn into a catastrophe for Erikson's followers. The wild lands were not empty. They had true masters who had no desire to cede territory to uninvited guests from the east. Just a couple of years later, Thjodhild, Leif's brother, will set off across the ocean on that same lucky Nar. But instead of grapevines and triumph, death awaits him from the weapons of those the Vikings considered merely shadows on the horizon. Luck is a personal gift. It cannot be bequeathed or loaned along with a sail and a keel. In the next episode, we will leave the warm feasting halls and plunge into the harsh chaos of colonization. The drama of Thorfinn Karlsefni awaits us, who risked founding a home in the New World. Before you will unfold the chronicle of first contact, from trading furs for milk to a bloody slaughter, where the role of the secret weapon is played by a furious Norse bull. You will see the birth of Snorri, the first European child on American soil, and you will learn how the insane ambitions of Freydis, daughter of Erik the Red, turned the dream of paradise into a nightmare that forced the Vikings to abandon the discovered continent. The journey is just beginning. Subscribe to walk this path to the end with us. Vinland awaits us. We are discovering America for real.